And now to talk about the module of the week, let's bring in Martin Anderson Klutz, a senior solutions engineer at Acquia, and maintainer of a number of modules of his own. Martin, what do you have for us this week?
Thanks, Nick. This week, I thought we would use this segment to actually talk about the most recent feature release of Drupal, which is 10.1. Now, work began on this branch almost a year ago, since by design, the initial release of a major version has the same features as the last release from the previous version. So, as a result, there's a ton of new features in this release. So thought would use the time here today to really highlight some of the key features that folks can look forward to when they upgrade to Drupal 10.1. So from a performance and UX standpoint, there's additional lazy loading. So for example, embed content and responsive images. There are enhancements for BigPipe in terms of having interface previews, which reduce page reflows and just create a better user experience. There's now on the fly JavaScript minification and, really a variety of different performance features there. From a theming standpoint, there's a ton of excitement in the community around single directory components. And we'll actually have a link to a recent DrupalCon session about that in the show notes. There are also checkboxes now to enable Twig debugging and disable Twig cache. So from a theme development standpoint, that's going to make life much easier. There are new Twig filters that have been added. So the ability to add class, set attributes, and create a clean, unique ID are all things that will make life easier for front-end developers. For editors, there are a variety of enhancements available for CKEditor 5. So an auto format capability that really will accept sort of markdown style input to, create headings, code blocks, and so on. The actual code block languages is now configurable through the UI. And also, there was sort of a bug in the 10.0 release where the row height setting for a CKEditor 5 formatted text element would not be respected. So it always sort of starts small until content was put into it, whereas now that will be respected. Also worth noting that there's a refreshed UI for bulk operations on your content, although I think users of the Gin admin theme will probably have already seen what some of those enhancements look like. And for site builders, there's now an updated UI for reusing existing fields, so kind of a completely new experience there.
Hmm.
View pages can now use the admin theme regardless of their path. And there's now a new experimental announcements module to allow site owners to sort of be kept abreast of, sort of news and events within the Drupal community. So sort of helping them to be more connected, I would say, with the Drupal community as well. And for developers, it's probably worth noting that there are quite a number of new deprecations. There's actually a link in the show notes to the change records for the 10.1 release. So I expect that folks maintaining things like Drupal Rector will have lots of work ahead of them. So let's talk about the Drupal 10.1 release.
Wow, that is so much more. Like I'd heard about the single directory components. I'm pretty excited about that. Um, and but there's so much in there that's way more than I expected. I'm pretty excited about the lazy loading. I've had to do a lot of work to add lazy loading kind of myself in a lot of places, so it's always nice to have that make its way back. And I am more excited about those checkboxes to enable Twig debugging
Yeah.
and caching than I thought I would be. No, so you mean I don't have to go to the server says YAML anymore? Like that's literally the only
Exactly.
reason. Well, actually for cache tags too, but that's pretty much the only time I ever go in there. That's so nice.
That's my favorite feature because I opened that issue right after DrupalCon Portland last year. And then at MidCamp this year, Mike Herschel sat me down and was like, Matt, we got to finish this. So like Mike and I wrote 2 blog posts about it. But that's what I'm most excited about because I hated having to edit settings.local.php and a services file just to bypass markup caching. So I hope that's a really big site builder / everybody can benefit from it.
Yeah, now that it's a checkbox, I wonder how many smaller sites are just going to randomly have Twig debugging just enabled.
Well, the good part is it saves it in state, not config.
Oh.
So that way it's per environment. That was a big, we can't let this be a configuration value because someone might export it So it's by state. So somebody could in production click the button, but you won't accidentally deploy it to production from your local.
No, but that actually makes it, that's actually nicer too, because there are times that you do need it in production just temporarily, and I'm never comfortable adding a services YAML just to add that, because like that feels heavily handed. But if you have a checkbox that you can check and then uncheck pretty quickly, you can turn on, check the page you need to check, copy the source code, turn it back off.
As a fan of config and config split, I don't know how I feel about that, but I will reserve my judgment for using it and see how it works.
I mean, what are the things you state like that? Like
entity schema definitions, last cron run time. So state is intended to be a place to store information about the current environment that's unique to that environment. It's like schema updates that have run. So that's why the state API is chosen.
Makes sense. No, that makes perfect sense. The other thing that kind of stood out to me is the CK editor row height issue. I have a client that is going to be upset about that bug fix because I'm like, I don't know. I encountered that bug. I'm like, this is weird. It's not respecting it. I don't understand why. And they go, we actually like that better because it takes up less space until we click in it. So they're not gonna enjoy that bug fix. But I do appreciate that bug fix myself.
Yeah, I've had clients who've complained about that. It's supposed to be 5 rows. Why is it 1?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, There's also another thing in that CK editor, which is they version bumped CK editor, which just fixed this bug with adding classes to like wrappers, like your UL and OLs. You couldn't really do it in the previous version. So that blocked me on a whole bunch of sites where I allow editors to choose kind of styling for the container and then do things to the children. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, that actually might explain the behavior I was seeing for another client, actually. So I'll have to test that after this update. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out the reuse existing fields too, because I'm curious what that UI looks like. I mean, I'm just so used to the old one. I have no concept of how that would even change. So I'm curious to see that.
Well, there's actually 3 pages of change requests if folks follow the link in the show notes. So lots to sort of sift through and pour over in terms of changes and improvements.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a lot. Well, Martin, thank you for. I kind of like this using this slot for this update because it's good to let our listeners know what's new. That's a lot of change. I mean, it's one of the advantages of the new release system for Drupal. Using semantic versioning. These types of changes used to take years. You had to wait for the next major version, and I think it makes sense not to have this much change in the 9.5 to 10.0, but being able to cram this much in really goes a long way to keeping Drupal fresh, I think, and on the bleeding edge. So thank you, Martin, and see you next week.